Yo, what's going on, U.S. history people? This is Mr. Norris,
And Mr. Lawrence.
and we're going to talk to you. Video number 3 in Launching of a New Nation. We have Washington assumes the presidency. Lots of exciting stuff that happens with the father of our country, but he's not the first president, Mr. Lawrence. Who was that?
John
Hanson?
Hanson, that's correct. And do you
Not-
remember what form of government he was the first president under?
Under the Articles of Confederation, right?
That is
Was
true.
it Congress?
That's right. Was he really an executive?
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
No, there was no executive branch under the Articles. He
All
was
right.
like the president of Congress, right?
That's correct. So again, if you ever hear the question, who is the first president of the United States, make sure the questioner clarifies, are you referring to the Constitution or the Articles of Confederation?
And Mr. Hanson's great-great-grandfather, right? No? Bad joke? All
Took
right,
me a second.
We'll move on. Okay. All right, so Washington assumes the presidency. George Washington becomes the first president of the United States in 1789. In his 2 terms as president, he took on multiple tasks when it came to both foreign and domestic. And foreign means outside the country, domestic means within. Fill notes. Fill in the notes below. Did you know there's a guy named Phil Notes? Well, anyway, he wants you to fill the notes below to find out about Washington's successes and achievements as United States president. Also, fill them in, F-I-L-L, as well as we go along here.
All right, so let's talk a Judiciary Act of 1789. Is there anything more exciting than the Judiciary
Oh,
Act
I
of
love
1789?
it. Look at this guy, John Jay.
That's right. Because, we need to know about this thing. And what it does, it sets up the Supreme Court at 6 judges and also appoints John Jay as the Chief Justice, as well as creating federal circuit courts. So again, it's important. For this course, we spend a lot of time focusing on the Supreme Court, but important to understand there are different levels of the federal judiciary that was set up under this Act of 1789.
Why is it a problem, Mr. Lawrence? They actually changed it today. There are 9 judges. Why did they change it from 6 to 9?
Well, I think the difficulty is having any even number. What do you think could happen when you have to make a decision?
Tie. You could have 3 and 3, and then nothing gets done.
That's right. So they tried to avoid ties, eventually putting it at the odd number of 9.
All right, so let's go to the Whiskey Rebellion. This is a domestic challenge under Washington. You see him on his horse. Hey, his horse's name is Nelson, right? Wasn't that Nelson?
That's what I learned from the video.
Yeah, so there's Nelson, the white horse that he rode. This was in Pennsylvania. There was a rebellion over the excise tax on whiskey. And hopefully you remember from the Hamilton video that excise taxes are taxes on manufactured goods in the United States. So a bunch of farmers were really upset about this tax, so they rebelled. And Washington quickly put down the rebellion. And this showed that the Constitution, the government under the Constitution, will enforce its power. This can often be contrasted with Shays' Rebellion, which showed that the Articles of Confederation was weak because there was no national military. Now, under the Whiskey Rebellion, the national military was able to put this down.
So this really showed us the strength of this new Constitution. It was kind of a great example of, for the founders or for the Federalists, to kind of show the American people this is the importance of having this new Constitution in
Absolutely.
place.
This is just one of several precedents that Washington set.
Absolutely. All right, so political parties. This is something that's kind of an unintended consequence that develops out of this time period, specifically with the growth of the Constitution. And one thing George Washington believed was that political parties were not necessarily a good thing for society, that they could really promote too much division within your country and could lead to more conflict and more problems.
He actually mentioned this in his farewell address. And in addition to being aware of permanent alliances, he said that political parties are bad. Too bad nobody listened to him. All right, let's go to foreign policy. Washington issues his farewell address, and he talks about this idea of neutrality. And this proclamation of neutrality focused on expanding commercial relations or trading with countries, but avoiding formal alliances with other nations. So trading with them is fine, especially with Britain and France, but avoid military alliances with other nations. The United States was a very young country and was weak, and he recognized that if the U.S. got dragged into a war, chances are it would lose or suffer great casualties. So trading is good with countries, military alliances is bad. Trade good, alliance is bad.
Trade good?
Trade good, but
alliances, military
alliance is bad.
Okay. All right, Alien and Sedition Acts. And this is not something that necessarily falls under Washington's presidency.
This is Adams, yeah.
And again, we combine these issues really under the Washington time period of American history, not necessarily under his presidency. So this was something that develops under Adams, and it's important to understand the Alien and Sedition Acts. So what were the Alien Acts? Well, they made it more difficult to become a U.S. citizen, but also gave the president more power, specifically the power to remove foreigners from the country who he may have saw as a threat. The Sedition Act, on the other hand, made it illegal to speak out against the government. So if we were to see these laws put into practice today, Mr. Norris, do you think these would be a violation of the First Amendment in a way?
Absolutely, yeah. Especially the Sedition Act, which makes it illegal to criticize the government, that would be overturned. But the problem was it wasn't overturned in 1798. Do you know why?
Was it because of Marbury versus Madison did not happen yet?
Yes, that is true. We are 5 years away, and hopefully you know that Marbury versus Madison is established judicial review. So these laws were put into place, and they expired 2 years later. So unfortunately, America kind of had to deal with these laws. All right, let's go to Republicans, and we're talking about Jeffersonians here, also Democratic Republicans, and they do not support the Alien and Sedition Acts. This was actually aimed at them so they couldn't criticize the Federalist President John Adams. So the Republicans believe that the acts were an infringement or taking away people's individual natural rights. They were not fans of this whatsoever.
All right, so something else we have to be aware of at this time period was the Jay Treaty, and this issue dealt with the United States and Great Britain. So it was at this time Britain was hijacking U.S. merchant ships and stealing U.S. cargoes. Also, we'll be talking about the issue of impressment will start happening as well. The treaty was signed to avoid going to war with Great Britain. When Americans saw that the United States was really coming to peace or terms with Britain over the issues that were happening on the high seas, many Americans saw this almost as John Jay becoming a traitor, not really standing up to the British and saying that, if you're going to come after us, we're going to come after you. So they saw this as almost, what would you say?
A slap in the face.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, some people question Washington and question the creation of the Jay Treaty and really not exerting American independence.
And also, you see this picture here. They burned his image in effigy, so they made a straw man, and they labeled him John Jay, and they would burn him. So that saying "burn in effigy" actually is an old term, and they would do that to John Jay here. So many Americans disliked him. All right, guys, that is it for video number 3. Please turn to the video response page of your packet, and in at least 3 sentences, we need 3, identify what you feel was the most important foreign and domestic policy issues faced by the new nation and explain why. So 1 foreign policy, 1 domestic, explain why that's important. We will check this tomorrow, so make sure you have it. Thank you guys for watching. And how many sentences, Mr. Lawrence?
Make sure it's 3, because again, we're learning to write like
historians. And Phil Notes would be very proud of you if you do 3 sentences.
Yeah, you would be impressed. Phil Notes is a good guy.
Have a good day, guys.